or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Paul Denning, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from current issues of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is the issue from the 16th and 17th of the month. Lasting impact. Plenty to celebrate as Niagara Charter School marks 20 years. This is written by Mark Shearer of the Gazette. Supporters of Niagara Charter School have had a lot of reasons to celebrate this year. The Lockport Road School is marking 20 years of service to the community in 2026. On April 14, teachers and administrators received welcome news from the New York State Board of Regents, which approved the school's request for renewal of its charter for an additional 5 years. Finally, the National Training and Assessment Company, Franklin Covey Education, named Niagara Charter School a Leader in Me Lighthouse School. The certification from the National Training and Assessment Services Company is granted to schools demonstrating outstanding student outcomes and achievement. Our renewal and lighthouse designation are not just honors, they are validations of the work our students, staff, and families do every day, said Niagara Charter School's Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Darcy Novak. For 20 years, Niagara Charter School has been committed to developing not only strong scholars, but strong leaders and citizens. Charter schools are tuition-free public schools, organized and operated by not-for-profit boards independent of local school districts. They are required to obtain renewals of their charters from the State Education Department. Every 5 years. As part of the charter renewal process, schools are expected to demonstrate sustained academic growth with measurable gains in student achievement, particularly among historically underserved populations. Opened in 2006, Niagara Charter School provides instruction to students in grades kindergarten through 6. School representatives said approval of their 5-year charter renewal request by the State Board of Regents affirms Niagara Charter's strong performance and its continued impact on students and families. They noted that their school's instructional model emphasizes rigorous, standards-based teaching paired with targeted interventions and data-driven decision-making to ensure all students succeed. As a result, they say, Niagara Charter has built a reputation for strong academic outcomes, leadership development, positive school culture, and family and community engagement. We believe that true academic success is built on strong character, collaboration, perseverance, responsibility, and compassion. And this renewal allows us to continue advancing that mission with purpose for years to come, Novak said. Leader in Me Lighthouse Schools are recognized nationwide for exemplary implementation of leadership principles that empower students to take ownership of their learning and behavior. Niagara Charter representatives said the designation highlights the school's success in fostering student agency, goal setting, and a positive, inclusive school climate. They also said the Leader in Me Lighthouse designation supports Niagara Charter's deeply rooted culture, which also emphasizes character and leadership. For 2 decades, Niagara Charter School has strived to develop each student's character through engaging and challenging academic work, Novak said. For more information about Niagara Charter School, you can contact ncsinfo@niagaracharterschool.org. Next article is written by Heidi Trushell Light of the Gazette. Candlelight curated CEO says workers must apply. Company officials, state lawmakers say facility will employ 100 to start. Lockport. The CEO of the new Candlelight Curated Inc., which purchased the former Candlelight Cabinetry Company, asks former employees to be patient for another week as the company starts up operations by seeking orders. At a press conference on Friday at the manufacturing facility at 24 Michigan Street, Peter Demakos, CEO of the newly formed Candlelight Curated, said the cabinetry company expects to start its first phase of operations in 2 to 3 weeks and will add employees as orders are received. While State Senator Rob Ort said Friday that the new company would preserve 100 jobs, Demakos said, as a brand new company, no one has been hired yet, and all interested workers would need to apply. Positions are posted at https://candlelightcab, all one word, lowercase, .com/careers. Demakos said he hoped to have an office open at the company in another week. Demakos, who formerly served as commissioner for the Niagara Frontier Transit Authority, said he could not commit to any predetermined number of jobs to be created, but said Cuisine Ideale, a Quebec cabinet manufacturer that is also investing in the operation, brings the potential for 100 jobs or more. The plant previously employed nearly 170 workers. The opportunities for this company are even better with Cuisine Ideale, he said. We are in this for the long term, Demakos said. I was attracted by the reputation of the company, which distributes products across the East Coast. It would have been a shame to have lost this. For the past 11-plus weeks, we've been working day and night to make this happen. This was an international team effort. Cuisine Ideale will provide executive leadership and manufacturing expertise. John Ebel, a partner in the new enterprise, who said he was the first investor to explore the facility, credited 3 former site managers, Josh Wilson, Paul Biter, and Ben Garnes, with being helpful in any way possible, from providing operational information to cleaning up the parking lot and mowing the lawn for the press conference. Standing at the back of the press conference, the former managers said they have not been hired by the new company. The cuisine guys are stoked, Ebel told the 3. It has so much potential. Biter, a former operations manager, said he was excited about the new company. Quotes, Cuisine sells a different style of product, so there's no competition, Biter said. This is a really nice marriage. People are eager, Garnes said of his former co-workers. We want to give information now that we have some. Our goal in helping them was to get moving so it can happen a little quicker, Wilson said. Governor Kathy Hochul announced the formation of Candlelight Curated Inc. on Thursday. The new enterprise is a joint partnership between three local investors, DeMarcos, Ebel, and Aaron Santa Rosa, along with Cuisine Ideal. Ort said Friday that the new ownership group couldn't have turned the key on the manufacturing facility without $6 million in tax credits in addition to their own investments. Aaron Santa Rosa, a partner in Candlelight Curated, said joint investment with Cuisine Ideal is expected to reach $11 million. Acknowledging the sudden foreclosure of Candlelight Cabinetry in January, which left many employees without information and unpaid paychecks, Ort said part of the $6 million is earmarked to compensate former employees for what they are owed. Ort did not have additional details on how that back pay would be administered or when. He said he wasn't aware of whether criminal charges would be filed against the company's former owners, and that the matter was handled by the Department of Labor. That goes wherever it goes, Ort said. DeMarcos said the plant closure was so sudden that boxed orders remain on the shipping dock. Our responsibility is to restore trust, he said. We're committed to restoring the stellar reputation of the company under Bob Sanderson and creating stability for employees. Next article was also written by the Gazette staff, Rick Pfeiffer. 7 vie for school board. 4 seats open as voters weigh in on proposed $211 million budget in the Falls. Niagara Falls voters will go to the polls Tuesday to fill 4 vacancies on the Board of Education and pass judgment on a proposed $211 million district budget for 2026 to 27. The budget proposal, with a projected $9 million deficit, has attracted little community engagement. A public hearing on the spending plan saw no speakers. School district officials have balanced the budget without the need for a property tax hike. Julie Jacklin, from the district's Office of Business Administration and Finance, told school board members the tax levy remains unchanged since 2014. The proposed budget does rely on some financial maneuvering to stay balanced. It totals $211,260,990, $9 million more than the 2025 to 26 school spending plan, with a 4.1% increase in expenditures. The district will use roughly $8.5 million from a variety of budget reserve funds. Sometimes referred to as rainy day funds. School Superintendent Mark Laurie said it was raining hard on the district, but that board members had a sturdy umbrella. The budget calls for the district not to fill current staff and teaching vacancies. The majority of the district's anticipated retirement vacancies will also remain unfilled. The district anticipates 28 retirements at the end of its current fiscal year in July. Laurie said 16 of those positions will not be filled in 2026 to 27. Laurie and some school board members have repeatedly stressed that, in addition to not raising taxes, the district is not considering layoffs, school closings, or program reductions to get out of its financial trouble. Quotes, "This is not a crisis. This is a call to watch. There is still $40 million in reserves," Laurie said. Voters will also fill 4 vacancies on the Board of Education. Incumbent members Robert Bilson and Earl Bass are each seeking new 5-year terms on the board. Residents also need to fill 2 current vacancies on the school board. Those openings were created by the resignations of board members Brad McLeod and Michael Capizzi. Capizzi left the board in February with 2 years remaining on his term. McLeod departed in April with 3 years still to serve. The board could have appointed replacements, Lori said, but with the close proximity of the election, they decided not to do that. In addition to Bilson and Bass, former City Council member Kristen Granetti, Falls Fire Chief Jason Zona, community activist Jacqueline Pryor, Niagara Community Information Group Vice President Michael Barksdale, and Siobhan Ray are also on the ballot. Lori said the top 2 vote-getters will win the open 5-year board terms. The third highest vote-getter will serve out the remainder of McLeod's term, and the fourth highest vote-getter will take over Capizzi's seat on the board. Next article is also written by the staff of the Gazette, Mark Scheer. Legal costs for NFR eminent domain battle tops $158,000. Members of City Council have split views on spending. The cost of legal services tied to the city's effort to forcibly acquire 10 acres of private land for Mayor Robert Restaino's Centennial Park project has topped the $158,000 mark. A spokesperson for Restaino's administration confirmed, in response to questions from the Niagara Gazette, that as of April 10, the city has paid $158,153.71 to Hodgson Russ, the Buffalo-based law firm representing the city in its eminent domain case against the owners of the 10 acres, the private firm Niagara Falls Redevelopment. In a statement issued by spokesperson Philip Wells, representing the city's paid private public relations firm E3 Communications, Restaino defended the legal costs as a necessary part of the development of Centennial Park, a $210 million arena and events campus he wants to build on 2 parcels of NFR land located off John B. Daly Boulevard at the intersection of 10th and Falls Streets. As has been communicated throughout this process, Centennial Park will be a transformative economic development project that will have lasting generational impacts on Niagara Falls and the region, Restaino said in the statement issued by the mayor's paid spokesperson, Philip Wells. It is unfortunate that the city has to go through the eminent domain process, but it's time for the city to take control of its own destiny rather than continue the approach of the last few decades where development has been stagnant. In an attempt to put the cost in perspective, the administration's statement suggested eminent domain legal costs, quotes, pale in comparison to the municipality's other rising costs, including tens of millions of dollars for cost of living increases, contractual obligations, health care costs, and unfunded state mandates. Restaino publicly announced his intent to pursue Centennial Park's development in 2021. Working with paid consultants, the administration later identified NFR's 10 acres as the preferred project location. NFR insists it wants to build a $1.5 billion data center complex known as the Niagara Digital Campus in the same area. The city, represented by private attorneys from Hodgson Russ, is now engaged in court-sanctioned mediation with NFR's attorneys. The private talks, being overseen by New York State Supreme Court Justice Deborah Chimes, are intended to produce a settlement in several legal disputes between the two parties. Two of those disputes involve disagreements over the status of NFR's land and the city's bid to use its power of eminent domain to acquire it. Restaino, who previously questioned the legitimacy of NFR's data center plan, has in recent weeks suggested the court mediation could produce a so-called two-project solution, which would allow both projects to move forward. Quotes, Centennial Park, and even a two-project solution that is currently being discussed, will finally allow the city to generate much-needed revenue that again will transform the city's economic fortunes by increasing room stays, increased spending by out-of-town visitors, and most importantly, create full-time jobs for residents who work in the tourism sector, Restaino said in the statement issued by Wells. Municipal governments are required to release information deemed public under the parameters of New York's Freedom of Information Law. Legal bills involving the expenditure of public money are generally considered public information. However, the law does allow for redaction of documents based on a limited set of exceptions. Restaino's administration has been reluctant to share updated cost figures for eminent domain legal services with the press and city council members in the past. The Niagara Gazette previously reported, based on information the newspaper obtained through a state Freedom of Information Law request, that Hodgson Russ billed the city $44,274 for eminent domain services rendered through September 30, 2022. When the newspaper attempted to obtain updated information in a follow-up FOIL request seeking updated Hodgson Russ invoices submitted to the city from June 30, 2022 to February 7, 2024, the city's legal department did not respond and also did not reply to a formal appeal. The administration's failure to comply with state law prompted the Gazette to consult with Heather Murray, an attorney with the Cornell Law School First Amendment Clinic, which assists journalists and media outlets with government transparency matters. She sent a letter on the newspaper's behalf to the city's lead attorney, Thomas DuBois, advising his office of the administration's need to adhere to state Freedom of Information Law. In her letter, Attorney Murray argued that the city's failure to respond to the newspaper's request and subsequent appeal represented a constructive denial. Murray's letter directed the administration to fulfill the initial request within 10 business days, in keeping with New York's public information law. Quotes, the city's lack of response here flouts FOIL's requirement that an agency determine whether to grant the February 2024 request within a reasonable time period and thus constitutes a constructive denial, Murray wrote in her letter to DuBois. In August 2024, 5 months after the newspaper's initial request, Restaino's administration released copies of 14 additional invoices submitted by Hodgson Russ that show the city paid the law firm an additional $46,700, bringing the total cost through February 21 of that year to $90,974. Former Councilman Dante Miles pressed for more detailed information about the cost of legal services tied to eminent domain while he was still in office. During a telephone interview this week, he said there's no reason council members or members of the public or the press should be prevented from seeing public documents, invoices from private law firms included. I feel like that's something we deserve because these are tax dollars being used to pay them, he said. I want to see in detail what the city has spent its money on and the cost for every call from Hodgson Russ to NFR's lawyers. Any interaction and engagement that could cost the city money. Everything. It's not a hard ask. It's not something that's impossible to receive. And it's something the public should know. It's a public information because these are public dollars. Current Falls Councilman Vincent Cawley agrees. Cawley said the $157,000 figure provided by the administration to the Gazette does not present a full and accurate account of how much tax money Ristano's administration has devoted to the pursuit of his arena project. Like Miles before him, Cawley said he has asked, and has not yet been told, for updated costs associated with the Centennial Park project, including fees paid to lawyers, lobbyists, and consultants. An email on the subject Cawley sent on January 15 went unanswered by its recipients, the city's lead attorney Tom DuBois and acting city controller Maria Brown. I asked this question months ago and I haven't heard a thing about it, Cawley said. I want to see actual documents and actual numbers in terms of spending, he added. Cawley, who has expressed support for NFR's data center plan, said he opposes Ristano's Centennial Park development because he believes the city has many more important needs than a $210 million hockey arena. There are other ways to help Niagara Falls be revitalized than going with this monstrosity, Cawley said. Council Chairman Brian Archie said he views the expenditure as a means to an end for a city involved in a process tied to a larger effort to pursue a larger development project. Archie said he thinks the spending would have less controversy surrounding it if the information was made more readily available and the expenditures were discussed more openly to give the public a better understanding. If anything, I would just say the process of spending should have just been clearer the entire pathway, he said. I truly feel that people aren't all up in arms because you are doing a thing. They are more up in arms because you won't talk to them about it. Councilwoman Bridget Miles said she also views the expenditure as necessary to the ongoing effort to finish what the administration has started in terms of making something happen in the area where NFR has owned largely undeveloped land for decades. With the eminent domain process, she said she's hopeful the administration has finally started to move the needle a little bit where NFR's years of stagnation is concerned. My belief is go ahead and finish what you started and see what you can do to change things, she said. It's time that NFR releases that hold it has had on Niagara Falls and let us flourish and let us start to thrive, she added. This is another staff, This next article is another staff article by Robert Creenan by the Gazette. Steel-bound Niagara Falls opens its doors. It's located in former TGI Fridays spot along Old Falls Street. Steelbound Brewery and Distillery is opening its newest location this week in downtown Niagara Falls, adding a new option for Sheraton Niagara Falls guests. The new restaurant is a franchise location run by Sheraton's owner, American Niagara Hospitality, at a former TGI Fridays location next to the Rainforest Cafe. It features 2 bars and a 230-person capacity, 150 inside and 80 outside along Old Falls Street. This is Steelbound's 6th location, with others in Ellicottville, Springville, Dunkirk, Williamsville, and Pahrump, Nevada, about an hour outside of Las Vegas. Opening day, Tuesday, featured a VIP party from 3 to 5 p.m., a ribbon cutting, live music, and specialty cocktails for guests. It opened to the public on Thursday. General Manager Don Rudowitz said they would mirror the original Ellicottville location while creating their own guest experience. We want to be a destination for tourists as well as for locals, Rudowitz said. Being the only true bar in the hotel, we can cater to hotel guests all year. Food offerings include traditional pub food like burgers, pastas, pizzas, sandwiches, soups, and handheld appetizers like Mexican street corner bites. Locations have 44 different beer varieties, 12 of them being their core offerings. Excuse me. And 30 different kinds of spirits. Beer and liquor offer will initially be shipped in from Ellicottville, but on-site serving tanks would enable them to be made on-site. 3 new beers will be made exclusively for the Niagara Falls location, including Made in the Mist Lager and Black Ice IPA. Despite worries about the upcoming tourism season, Rudowitz said they expect the summer months to be busy, given their prime location on Old Falls Street. They also want to attract convention-going groups and locals during the off-season. We'll be extremely busy as the new kids on the block in the area, he said. Between 80 and 100 new staff would be hired. The new space had cost American Niagara Hospitality reportedly between $700,000 and $800,000, with the company applying for a Global New York Fund grant from Empire State Development to cover some costs. Steelbound's regular hours starting out will be from noon to 9 p.m. every day. Hours may change depending on seasonal events, with the bar looking to open later on weekends. Turning to the opinions page, we have an opinion written by Tom Valley at tally@rochester.rr.com. His article is called From the Valley. A month of repeating myself. I ramble quite often in this column on various disjointed topics. If you've read a few, I'm sure you've noticed. And in keeping with this month's theme of looking back at the past 20 years of From the Valley, I've found some examples of that sometimes used plan of attack, and so I thought I'd put them on today's menu. Let's roll. From November of 2006, from an aptly titled piece called I'm a Rambling Guy, comes this flashback. I used to read my horoscope every day. I believed everything it said. I planned not only my day, but how I'd live my life moving forward by what it told me. Yesterday it said, don't believe everything you read. There are people out there trying to con you. I was convinced. so I quit reading it. Next, I called the psychic hotline, and the lady who answered asked, "Who's calling, please?" I got upset that she didn't know, so I hung up. I wonder if she saw that coming. I can be very unreasonable. Another, I took my dog for a walk yesterday. The wind was so bad that there were whitecaps in her saliva. I apologize for that. Have you ever seen that blurry picture of Neil Armstrong stepping from the ladder onto the moon's surface? I have a question or two. Seriously, how could there be such genius technology to go to the moon and back, and yet not to have a camera that could take a clearer picture? The fact is, when you look at the evidence, they did have a better camera with them. The one that took a clear, colored photograph of the Earth, 250,000 miles. That one was excellent. But from an 8-foot-away shot of the most historic event in the history of the world, they apparently went with the $1.25 model from Dollar General. And how come the photographer who snapped that picture wasn't credited as the first person on the moon? Moving on, I don't know how they can get away with calling a TV program Antiques Roadshow, when I've never once seen them showcase an old highway. Have you ever noticed that politicians running for office who promise to clean up our country from the mess we're in are the ones who have an egregious amount of flyers printed, mail them out, place them on our windshields, and even go door to door unloading them? They also cause an abysmal eyesore by littering our streets and highways with their damn signs. Suggestion: those running for office can start by cleaning up their own crap. It's their frigging mess. Just a thought. This final note from a column in November of 2020. A guy walks into a doctor's office and tells the physician, "You've got to help me." The doctor asked him what the problem was. The man says, "It's Tom Jones, the singer. He permeates my very essence. Everywhere I go, I can't get him out of my head." The doctor listens as the man continues. "He's constantly on my mind. Tom Jones songs, Tom Jones lyrics. No matter where I go, no matter what I do. Every time someone does something or says something, Tom Jones pops into my mind. It's driving me nuts." The man starts to plead with the doctor. "Tell me, Doc, be honest. Am I losing my mind? Am I going crazy? I've got to know the truth. Is this some rare disease I've got?" The doctor tries to reassure the distressed man, walks over to him and gently puts a hand on his shoulder and says, "It's not unusual." I know, like everyone else who emailed me after that was published, you could see it coming. Hey, ever think of working on the psychic hotline? Anyhow, I get emails. I mentioned once that I built and sold picnic tables in a column. I'd paint sports logos or whatever the buyer wanted across the top. Then I'd put a finishing coat over the whole table. I got a letter from a guy asking me if he could buy an unfinished table. Apparently he was trying to save money. He asked, "Can you send me a picture of one of your unfinished tables?" I emailed him back saying I could. Pardon me. I then sent him a picture of a pile of lumber. I told you I was unreasonable, but for now, that's the way it looked from the valley. The next commentary is from someone named B.B. Singer, who has taught at several area colleges. And the title is "The Effort at Adulthood." So many these days have a talent, it seems, for being snarly no-accounts, not least at protests this forgiving country has let unfold as prolonged, horrid irritations they've intermittently been on our streets or even elite campuses. Ain't it time to dump some of the late 60s heritage, which has only led to more and more movement downward, and once over 21, go forth as more self-respecting and better-clad adults? I sometimes feel this problem visually when watching old Perry Masons on TV, along with many others who do so too. Yes, Perry Mason, with the men and women so right for their roles and dressed to the nines, compared to today, were in real life perfect humans? No way. Apparently Raymond Burr, doing so wonderfully with the iconic part of his lifetime, did have his kinks, but at least he tried in his role to look like a true adult, and he conveyed that successfully. Beyond Hollywood, this was once basic for most in real life as well, to at least give it the old college try of sorts, making an effort at adulthood, and yes, dressing the part too. For the Mason cast, it was a period when these types were still marked by truly adult challenges of a depression background, followed by the existential exigencies of World War II, in which so many of that generation served, including Mason's sidekick, Paul Drake, who in real life, as William Hopper, son of the gossip columnist Hedda Hopper, was indeed in that prolonged conflict, and who in his role also looks fully and completely mature, including via an unhealthy penchant for smoking cigarettes in an eminently cool way. This was a proclivity that killed off William Tallman, Mason prosecutor Hamilton Berger, far too early, but he also seems truly adult on Mason, yes, in his own fine suits, ties, and shoes, and with hair clipped just so. And the women, pre-pants and jeans revolution, in their dresses, nylons, and heels, naturally including Barbara Hale's Della Street, plus this or that defendant or other secretary. Yes, being a secretary was okay, back then too. At least they all made the effort toward maturity. I do seem fond of that formulation, don't I? The old college try. Speaking of which, college too used to be for would-be adults, didn't it? Back in the day, as late as the early 60s, Cornell or Harvard were, for men, still worthy of sports coats and ties. Not remotely now, except perhaps at graduation. In that period, these collegians at Ivy League schools were serious, or certainly did their best to look and be that, and to respect what those fora of enlightenment were then giving them. As with Raymond Burr or William Tallman, World War II wasn't yet cartoonish to these students of the 50s and into the first years of the 60s. It wasn't at all the stuff of pastiche, Colbert-type material for jokes. And speaking now of Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel, they too have great appeal, especially to the puerile, versus the ex-king of late night, the one who always will be, Mr. Johnny Carson, who, by the way, was also in World War II, who, by the way, boxed in his youth, who, by the way, was a private plane pilot, and who, by the way, also looked right in his own suits and sports jackets, and like an adult, a true adult. A flawed one, too? No question. Just read his sidekick, Henry Bushkin's book on Johnny. But again, in earlier generations, you simply gave it the real go to become the best adult you could be, Achilles' heels and all. Would that were still overwhelmingly the case in way? Nothing good emanating from the late 60s and 70s overturning of long-standing civilizational norms? Of course there was, and is. But I still stand by my title and theme here. That is, the effort at adulthood. Is it really so bad to aim higher, choose more suitable role models, and respect oneself, including sartorially? The answer seems to be, it sure wouldn't hoit, as Brooklynites once put it, and as it says here as well. Here's a small article. Erie Canal opens for the season. The New York State Canal System officially opened for the season on Friday. It's the 202nd consecutive season of navigation, and at a time when America readies to celebrate its 250th birthday, is a reminder of New York's critical role, both past and present, in our country's history, according to the New York Power Authority and New York State Canal Corp. We have a year packed with events and community celebrations and hope that New Yorkers and visitors across the 524-mile system join us to enjoy all that this scenic waterway has to offer, NYPA President and CEO Justin Driscoll said. New York State Canal Corporation maintenance and operations staff worked through a challenging winter season to ensure the canal system's locks, lift bridges, and infrastructure assets are safe and in good working order to welcome boaters from around the world. All but 3 of the canal system's 57 locks began their seasonal operation on Friday. The Erie Canal between Lock E24 in Baldwinsville and Lock E25 in Mays Point, and the Cayuga-Seneca Canal between the junction with the Erie Canal and Lock CS1 in Cayuga, are experiencing high water due to recent rain. Those sections of the canal system will open once the water levels recede and buoys are placed. Here is a historical article written by Anne-Marie Linneberry, who is the Assistant Director of the Niagara History Center. 18 Mile Creek generates new industries. Last week, this column highlighted some of the first mills that developed along 18 Mile Creek in the village of Lockport in the early and mid-19th century. By the last quarter of that century, some had disappeared, a few were still going, and several new ones had been established. The 1875 Niagara-Orleans County Atlas labels the mills and industries along the creek. As mentioned previously, to document all the mills and industries along 18 Mile Creek in the village or city of Lockport would take much time and research, so only a few of the larger and more long-standing will be discussed here. Starting at the western end of the creek, but before it enters the town of Lockport at Plank Road, Albert Brown had built a paper mill in 1865 in Mill Tract No. 9. It had earlier been the site of John Stahl's grist mill. In some sources, it is referred to as a straw mill or ground wood mill. The first is more accurate in the earlier years of the mill, as straw, rather than wood, was used to make the paper. The process is too long and complicated to repeat here. Brown was the father-in-law of Jesse Peterson, who took over the Brown paper mill in 1880 and started United Indurated Fiber Company in 1885. He improved the Brown mill on the south side of Gooding Street, across from 18 Mile Creek. These products were made from wood pulp, the advantage being that objects made from this material do not shrink, swell, leak, soak up water, or rust. The problem with wood pulp is that it is very flammable. In 1893, the same year A.F. Brown died, The indurated fiber buildings were destroyed by fire and rebuilt across the creek closer to Mill Street. Fires occurred again in 1900, 1909, and twice in 1915. With the continued risk of fire and the production of galvanized steel containers, the company ceased operation in 1922. These products were so well made that even after more than 100 years, there are still many around Lockport and in use for one purpose or another. South of Brown's was George Wells and Sons Sash and Blind Factory and Sawmill in Mill Tract number 6 on William Street between Gooding and Mill Streets. Not much could be found on George Wells. His obituary said he had been engaged in the lumber business, having been associated with Mr. Edwards and others. At some point in late 1860s or early 1870s, George Wells bought the sawmill from a Mr. Edwards. It could have been either John or William, as both names show up in the sources, and began the manufacture of window sashes and blinds, both in demand in the home building industry. For a few years, Wells was in partnership with John Steele, who later bought him out and continued the business. In 1884, he saw the sawmill became the Lockport Paper Mill, which in turn became the Flint Coat Company in 1928. More about that company next week. The next large company going south on 18 Mile Creek on Mill Tract number 5 was the James Jackson Sawmills. Previously owned by Samuel Daniels, Jackson acquired the sawmill in 1859. He had moved to Lockport in 1858 and opened his first lumber yard a year later. He built a Gothic-style gingerbread home at the southeast corner of Pine and Walnut Streets, site of the new Cornerstone FCU branch. His home and business were both featured in the 1878 Illustrated History of Niagara County book. Large contracts with the New York Central Railroad and New York State made the Jackson's Lumber Company one of the busiest in the state. A fire in 1889 destroyed the lower mill on 18 Mile Creek, and it was not rebuilt. The property became the Traders Paper Mill in 1896, which later merged with the United Box, Board, and Paper Company in 1902. More about that company next week. An interesting aside was reported in 1909. The Traders Mill, which kept its name until 1911, began work on building a park on their piece of the UBBPC property. The park would encompass the block bounded by Mill, Chapel, Clinton, and Alcott streets. Although the article stated the work was in progress, it is not known if the park was ever opened. The Niagara Mill was originally built as a flour grist mill in 1832 by Henry Walbridge and had numerous owners and purposes over the years, but retained the same name. In 1889, it was converted to a paper mill by several of Lockport's leading businessmen and also manufactured other materials, such as Niagara covers, tailor's patterns, and specialties. On the 1908 Atlas, the Niagara Mills properties labeled Cook and Balliet, the New York Cotton Batting Company. The Niagara paper mill operated through the 1920s, but the stock market crash affected many businesses, and in 1931, the company declared bankruptcy and closed shortly afterward. In January of 1940, the city directed that the mill be torn down due to being dangerous and a fire hazard. A month later, a notice appeared in the Lockport Union Sun and Journal stating, "Wrecking Niagara Paper Mill, all lumber and brick for sale at cheap prices." A sad ending to a local landmark that had stood for more than 100 years. There's an obituary. Eleanor L. Zelinsky, March 15, 1933 to May 11, 2026. Eleanor Zelinsky of the Creek Road, Lewiston, New York, passed away surrounded by her loving family on Monday, May 11, 2026. Eleanor was predeceased by her husband Charles in 2003. She is survived by her three daughters, Taryn Castick, Dana Bunnell, Chris, and Melissa Mazzarella, Fran Flanagan. Her beloved grandchildren, Aaron and Andrew Castick, Justin Taylor, and Kyria Gonka, Anthony and Nicolette Mazzarella, as well as four great-grandchildren, Nora, Grace, Vivia, and Anthony Jr. Eleanor was born in Maple Crest, New York, to Cyrus and Annabelle Hoyt. She was one of 8 children and predeceased by her siblings. Upon completion of high school, she earned her degree from Morrisville College and moved to Niagara Falls, where she then met Charles. She took a role as a dietitian at Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center, but spent the majority of her career at Fairchild Manor. After retirement, Eleanor found joy volunteering at Mount St. Mary's Hospital and being a deacon in First Presbyterian Church of Lewiston. In her additional free time, she loved baking, gardening, reading, and was an avid puzzler. She cherished time with her family and especially loved spoiling her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. A memorial service was held at First Presbyterian Church of Lewiston and will be held on June 9th at 6 p.m. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Lewiston Public Library in remembrance of Eleanor. Arrangements have been entrusted to Hardison Funeral Home of Lewiston, New York. Have fun in Hollywood, Ellie. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from current issues of the Niagara Gazette. We read from the Niagara Gazette every Saturday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Paul Denning. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Dunkirk Observer. Following that at 1 o'clock, we have a reading of some of our Northtown Bee papers, including Amherst, Clarence, Cheektowaga, Lancaster, and Depew. And then at 2 o'clock, we have the Southtown Bees, which includes Orchard Park, the Hamburg Sun, the East Aurora, and West Seneca papers. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio Reading broadcasts daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to people who are blind or have a print disability and are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. From broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road, Radio Reading continues our almost 40-year tradition of award-winning service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,